Hey, coach.
What's up, Coach?
Hey, coach. Nice seeing you.
Good to
How
see
are
you,
you?
Coach. I'm all right, hanging in there.
For those who don't know, Alab Pilipinas, we officially had our last practice. I think that was more than 2.5 months ago. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, almost three
Yes.
months.
Almost 3 months. So since then, I haven't seen Coach Jimmy too much. I only see him when I go for his wife's very delicious ube bread and Spanish bread. I break the diet a little bit for that. Really, really nice. But thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach Jimmy, for indulging this request for an interview.
No,
Uh,
for sure, Coach.
yeah. So again, the show is called Inside the Dugout, and I was telling all the viewers on Facebook that this morning, yesterday, I actually texted you asking for just an informal discussion or informal interview to be done on Instagram Live. But then this really just snowballed into more of something that is a little more in depth, a little, I guess,
Mhm.
deeper in the sense that we want to go into how you were as a player, how you are as a coach and as a leader, and what are the things that you do that make you different from others, and what are the things that you adapted along the way, or how you adapted along the way.
For
So
sure.
I hope you're game for that.
Yeah,
So
game.
so the first question, also if you're watching on Facebook, everybody, if you have any questions, just put it on the comment section. And if there's time later, we want to keep this under an hour. If there's time later, I'll read it out for Coach Jimmy to answer. So the first question that I wanted to ask Coach Jimmy is, of course, we're all in quarantine. All of
Mhm.
us are in quarantine. All of the athletes that I know, all of the coaches I know, we're all in quarantine all around the world, really. So what
Mhm.
it is that you've been doing since mid-March? Have you picked up a new skill, or have you picked up something new? Did you learn something new, or how have you been keeping yourself busy throughout this quarantine, Coach?
Well, Coach, things, especially for us, with Alab and our season, the ABL, things were moving along, and really my focus was, preparing our team for the last stretch. I think we had maybe 10 or 11 games left before the playoffs were going to start. And you and I know that's like busy time of the year for us. When we talk about April and May, but obviously with the pandemic, starting and picking up pretty rapidly, things just happen so fast. So the first few weeks, were a struggle. Um, I just getting over the idea of our season being done. Um, was disappointing. Not just for myself, but really for all of us as a staff. Our players, because I felt like the last 5 months we had been through so much, and I know how much time and effort we had all put into this particular season, and then for it to just come to literally an abrupt stop. It was tough, but again, understanding what the world is going through, not just us here in the Philippines, but the entire world. Um, you understand that safety comes first for everyone. But still tough. During the break, um, again, it took me a while to get through that, but I wanted to make sure because we didn't know how long this would go on. So I wanted to make sure that I was as productive as possible. Enjoying family time. I got the three babies. With my son being 7, my daughter being 5, and my youngest son being 2. Just enjoying the quality time with them. Again, they're not used to data being home this time of the year because usually we're traveling so much. But just this pandemic has forced you to be creative as a parent. Because they only do homeschooling, once or twice a week. Um, but aside from the quality time with the family, been reading a lot more. Been reading different basketball books and different just leadership type books to just continuing to stimulate the mind. Been watching a lot of basketball from our old games in the ABL. Been doing quite a few webinars with different coaches around the region, not just here in the Philippines, but in Japan, in Australia. And actually, just this morning, I did the first part of a webinar with David Blatt, the ex Cleveland Cavaliers coach, and really a EuroLeague legend in terms of what he's accomplished there. So that was really really awesome this morning. But again, just trying to be productive and trying to maximize this time, as much as possible, so that when hopefully it comes to an end, I'm ready to keep things going. I lost you, coach. I lost you.
I was on mute there a little bit. Yeah, sorry about
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah, so you saw David Blatt this morning then.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually very impressed with him as a coach. He didn't get a lot of love being the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, but we all know how good of a coach he is from his Euro League background.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a long talk. It was about 2 hours, but some really, really informative stuff. And I wrote everything down. I felt like I was back in college because I took so many notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. Actually, a good friend of mine who coaches in Japan, invited me to listen in, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's good that we have all of these webinars now, especially since we're all stuck at home. And like Coach Jimmy said, I try to do that also as much as I can. So I know this next question, Coach. I know the answer to this question because I know you by now. But are you a creature of habit? And if you are, do you rely heavily on that routine? And because of the pandemic and stuff, how are you able to adapt to that sudden change in that routine if you are a creature of habit?
Oh, absolutely. You know more than a lot of people. I'm a huge creature of habit. You know, I'm used to doing things a certain way, and used to being on the move. And again, we were right in the middle of our season, so
Yeah.
that's been a huge adjustment just in terms of being away from the game. Being 42. I don't think I've been away from the game this long.
Yeah.
But again, it is an opportunity to take advantage of the family time, and it does give you a chance to kind of sit back and think what will be the next move.
Mm.
In terms of just the future for myself, my family. But it definitely tough when this pandemic first started, just because again, I'm definitely a creature of habit. So
Yeah. All right. So now we'll move on to your adjustment from being a player first, and then slowly
mhm.
making that transition into being an executive, and then being an assistant coach, and eventually being a head coach that you are now. What was the biggest adjustment that you had to make from, I guess, being a player and to eventually being a coach?
I think when you're playing, you're going into a game thinking about what you need to do. How you need to perform your best, and what you can do for your team. What teammates to get involved, who the opponent is. But you're there. You're in the trenches,
Yeah.
and I think for me making this transition the last few years into coaching, you're forced to have a much broader perspective of the game because one, I'm not out there anymore. I'm not out there shooting or passing the ball. So you have to be much more conscious of what's happening to your team, who's doing things well, who may be doing things not so well. You're looking at the opponent, and what they're doing. So it forces you to just really, I think, as a coach, and watching from the sideline, you just have a broader perspective of everything. And
Mm.
for me, when I played, I thrive on the competition and competing, and the challenge that every game presented. But as a coach, you really have to take the emotional part of that aspect of the game out.
Yeah.
And that was a tough transition. But I feel like successful coaches need to be a model of poise, and a model of just composure, so that the team feels that. And if they feel like I'm nervous and my head's all over the place, I don't think that's necessarily setting a good example or a good standard for the team.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't. I guess I wasn't really watching the PBA in the wasn't
Coach, you there?
were you considered as a fiery guy? Were you considered as a fiery guy while you were playing?
I don't think I was. Sorry, Coach. I lost you for about
That's
10
okay.
seconds there. Um,
Yes. So
I don't think I was, but there were certain instances where I felt you had to be, um, whether it was to get myself going or to get the team going. Again, when you're battling and you're in the trenches, and competing and competing for championships, emotions run high, and
yeah.
you know I'd like to think that I wasn't so much, but when I needed to be, I could be. Um,
Okay.
Again,
Yeah.
especially when you're playing for a championship, and you know, at the end of the day, I'm all about winning, and I wanted my teammates, and even as a coach, I want my guys to be successful as well, and so if
Yeah.
instances require you to be a little fiery, then so be it.
Yeah, I really believe that the best ones know when to turn it on and when to turn it off, and when's the best time to do that. And I believe that you are one of those guys who can do that actually, because that isn't very easy to do. It's not as easy to turn it off or turn it on like on command. But I definitely get what you're saying. I was also a witness, first-hand witness of how hard you work, not only as a player but also as a coach. You have a legendary work ethic, and this comes not from me but also from everybody who you work with. Nobody can really question how hard you work, how hard you prepare, or how hard you prepare to go into a game as a player and also as a coach. But you are also a natural born leader. So my question really is: do you believe that leadership is something that is innate? That's something that you are born with? Are there really just natural born leaders, or is it something that you can develop through time? What do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate it, Coach. I think it's a great question. For me personally, I think it comes from my dad.
Hmm.
Um, my dad raised six kids with myself being the youngest. Um, and he was a great provider, and growing up, just always told me, if you're gonna do something, you go out there and you do your best.
Yeah.
My dad was very no nonsense when it came to school and came to sports. He was incredibly supportive, and even now, at my age and coaching, he's still
Hmm.
extremely supportive. But growing up, he was very no nonsense, and I think for me, I was the kid in high school, coach, and this. I'm not sure for those tuning in know this, but I was the kid in high school, the 4'9", 90 pound kid, first year of high school on the varsity. Um,
Yeah.
but I never played. I was the kid that the crowd would scream to put me in the game with the last 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're growing up and you're in high school, that is a tough thing to go through, because your friends are there, your family's there, and we've all been there. Status is important in high school, and
Mm.
and you want to go out there and be competing. I know I did, and I wasn't. And so it forced me to work extremely hard, and just be the first guy in the gym, the last one to leave, because I was fighting so hard to want to play. And so having that background from my family, my dad, my siblings, I think part of it was naturally, but then as I got older, just because I had to work so hard, it just kind of developed that way. So I think to a certain degree, it can be innate. You can be born with it. It can be very natural for you. But I think for other people, as you grow up, and you play your respective sport, the harder you train, you know by establishing a great work ethic, you become, very accountable to the people that you play with, whether it be your
Mm,
coaching staff or your teammates. And by building that accountability, building that respect amongst your teammates and your peers, it kind of puts you in a position of leadership. So, it works both ways.
yeah.
But again, it's more natural for some than others.
This isn't part of the questions I sent over to you, but this is something that we constantly talked about before when we were in Alab. Um, some guys just don't like talking. Some guys are just quiet. Some guys are just naturally quiet or naturally reserved. A good example
Mhm.
might be Kawhi Leonard, although that's all that we
Yeah.
see. But
Mhm.
you and I both know that there are players who just want to be quiet, want to be in their own corner. But some of these players are the best players in their team. So, what
Mhm.
do you think that the leader can be effective even if he is not a big talker, or even if he doesn't like talking in public or being vocal to his teammates?
Coach, I think quiet people can still be effective leaders. Um,
Okay.
Obviously, with work ethic, by being the best example to others on the team. I think that kind of sets a bar in terms of the environment and what you're trying to build in terms of the culture of your team. But at the same time, I think in order for them to be probably the best leader that they can be, it's important to at least speak up every once in a while, even if it's out of their comfort zone or a little out of the box for them. Because again, if you're putting in the work and you're setting that example and creating that culture and that environment in practice, everybody has their bad days. Teams have their
Mm,
bad days. You have your bad practices, and in those instances, the team's always gonna, you know, follow the person who sets the bar at practice. And it's in those moments where that leader might have to say a little something to encourage the guys. Hey, we got to be better than this. It might not even be something that you have to have some long drawn out speech. It could literally just getting the team together and saying, hey, listen, we got to be better today. We got to we have to pick it up. We're using every day as an opportunity to build on what we have set for this season, which is ultimately, any
yeah.
championship.
Yeah.
But again, quiet people can still be effective leaders because of the example they set. But I do think there are instances where they do need to step out of that comfort zone, because if you work that hard, the responsibility kind of naturally goes to you because,
Yeah.
people see you work hard. It doesn't give them any reason to be coming to practice late. They want to be there early and working on their game as well. But yeah, I think for leaders to be as effective as they can be, there are times where you just got to speak up.
You guys speak up. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so on to our next question. You mentioned earlier that you were in a David Blatt webinar earlier today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who follows you online, I'm sure all of you guys see that on Instagram, Coach Jimmy posts stories of quotes in the morning, all kinds of quotes in the morning. So, are there any specific coaches or personalities that you really look up to or you really follow online, and who you think you would pattern yourself as a person and as a coach too?
Um, Coach, I've now making this transition to coaching. You really have to almost study, and kind of restart that process, making the transition from playing the game to coaching, because it's really just a different ball game. For me, because I'm a huge basketball fan, and I've really tried my best to just study the coaches who've had the most success.
Mm.
You look at guys like Greg Popovich. You look at Phil Jackson, obviously. But even now in the newer generation of coaches, guys like Steve Kerr,
Mm.
Brad Stevens, Eric Spoelstra, um, you know, even my experience last summer with the Kings, and
Yeah.
being around Luke Walton, and just seeing how he would talk to the guys, even during the off season. It's summer league, and just seeing his rapport with his staff, with his players. I try to pay attention to all that, in terms of how they teach the game, their style of play. And I think the common denominator with all those top coaches is really the relationship that they have with their players, and how that dynamic has changed so much nowadays as opposed to before, where there was almost kind of a divide where it's like, hey, I'm the coach, you're the player. Now you see a lot more of the development within the relationship from player to coach, where
Hmm.
they're spending time together off the court and changing that dynamic, which I really feel overflows onto the court.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. It's great for any successful team.
Cool. So talking about mentors, and talking about people you follow, do you have a personal mentor, like somebody who you really look towards to for advice? You mentioned your father earlier, but do you have
Mhm.
any other mentors that you have who you really value when it comes to advice?
Um, Obviously my family, my brother Chris, especially, growing up, he and I were together every day, and then he's really the one who kind of got me started with the game of basketball. So even though he's in the States, we still talk often. And anytime I feel like I need advice, he'll always shoot it to me straight. He won't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
But in terms of coaches here, especially making
Mm.
this transition into coaching, two guys who really stand out would be Coach Norman Black and Coach Jamike Harin.
Mm.
We spent time together. I played for both of them throughout my career, and they've been extremely helpful in terms of just me making this transition, and have been very supportive, um, and have always encouraged me, especially during our first season when
Yeah.
things didn't get off how we expected to say the least.
Yeah.
But they've always reached out and been supportive, and that's meant a lot, because they know what I'm about and they know how I am, and I was fortunate enough to have built a great relationship with them because obviously I played for them for quite some time when I was in the PBA.
Is there a specific piece of advice that any of the two of them gave you that you keep with you up till now, even if it's not in coaching or even if it is in the form of coaching? Is there anything that you remember that you care to share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I learned from Coach Norman, especially during my last season when you and I were trained together, um, he just said, son, no matter if you're playing, you're coaching, the work never stops. You know, continue continue to be the hardest worker.
Mm,
I saw he saw my work ethic as a player, and he said, you need to understand that that shouldn't change now that you're a coach. And Coach Norman is obviously he's done it all, not
yeah,
only as an import player but as a coach. The
yeah,
5 straight at Ateneo, he's won a Grand Slam. The list goes on and on. So hearing that from someone who's literally done it all, on the coaching and playing level, meant a lot. And being with him my first season after I retired, and getting a chance to see that every day, and how particular he was in terms of his detail, and into how he broke down opponents, and what the game plan was going into each game. He was a great example of that, and it's something that I definitely try to follow. With Coach Jamike, Coach Jamike, you know, I I
I love
I
Coach
take
Mike.
I took the game very, very serious when I played, and maybe to a fault at
Okay.
times. And he always reminded me to enjoy the game and enjoy the process, and not try to stress yourself so much, as a player, and even as a coach. He said, hey, just trust your instinct. And one of the best things I love about Coach Mike, he told me before our first season together at Olive started, he said, Jimmy, don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah,
Don't limit yourself to strictly what you've experienced or what you see. It doesn't hurt to try something, because you just never know. And he goes,
yeah,
you have the knowledge, the basketball knowledge, to be able to try out new things. And he's like, hey, if it doesn't work, then you learn from it. But he goes, I know how much effort you put into your preparation for games. So, and again, even this season, it's something that I always thought about, considering we had a new team this past season. That don't be afraid to step outside that box a little bit and try new things.
To being a coach. There you go, coach. You're back.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. No, it's okay. I think we caught the tail end of that anyway. And like what I was saying, I did. Coach Jamaica is also. I actually coached against Coach Jamaica. If would you believe? I started out coaching high school basketball back in the late 2000s, and of course, I never won a game against him. But yeah, so that's how I met Coach Jamaica, and he's really a master tactician when it comes to being the man on the bench. So again, bring us back to today. We're all in quarantine. Everybody's currently stuck at home. Even with the quarantine being lifted on Monday, we all know that sports is a long way, well, a ways away from being back to normal. So, what is a piece of advice that you can give for now athletes? So let's start with athletes. What can you give as an advice for athletes during this time that we are all stuck in quarantine?
Yeah, coach, I think for athletes, obviously it's a tough situation. Athletes are used to being on the court, in the gym, training for the respective sport, but obviously with what's happening right now, that's not possible.
Yeah,
I would just encourage athletes, coach, just to continue doing the work from home. Um, Obviously it's a new challenge for all the athletes nowadays. But you find different workouts, online, different workouts you can do. And again, some people have the luxury of having a court or whatever equipment for the respective sport at home. Some don't.
yeah,
But I would just encourage them to continue preparing, and so that when sports do come back, and they will come back eventually, that they can hit the ground running. Because I think the worst mistake an athlete can make is to feel sorry for themselves of what's happening, because we all
yeah,
feel bad, and it's tough for everyone. But I think the worst thing you could do as an athlete is just stop and not use this time to get better. Whether
yeah.
it's to study your game, see what you can improve on, talk to your coaches. Nowadays with technology, it allows conversations like we're having now,
Yeah.
to continue that progress as an athlete. So again, it's just important for them to continue to do the work and not use, what's happening now, as unfortunate as it is, as an excuse to not get better.
True. Very true. Uh, just want to say hi to people tuned in. Sorry about that, Coach. Coach,
No, no, it's all right.
Chef Ed. You remember Chef Ed Bugia?
Hey, chef,
He's tuned
thanks
in.
for
He
tuning
said it.
in.
Said it was 90 pounds once in grade one. Also to Jet, hello, hello Jet. Um, now, having gone through the transition that you did from being a player to being an executive to eventually being a head coach, now that you've gone through that and you are now 3 years into being a head coach, what's one thing that you hope somebody told you before you went into that transition? What is one thing that you know now that you hope you knew before making this leap into coaching?
Oh man, it's crazy because there's so many things. I mean, I think one thing that I wish somebody would have told me,
Maybe
I guess,
warned you
before
about.
this. Yeah, I think just how tough it is to, when you're basically every season having a new team.
Yeah.
um and it's funny, coach, that you asked that, because uh Coach Blatt actually just touched on that, this morning during
Oh,
his during the webinar, um saying that, you know teams that are successful, you want to try to keep the core together, as long as possible, because he
yep.
said, that really ensures that you can continue building on what you've started from day one, from our
Yeah.
first season with Allah, to this past season. But for us, that hasn't been the case, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We've, players have moved on, and we understand that, but that's been the biggest challenge, because each year, we're all of us as a staff, you as
We're
our head
building.
trainer and strength and conditioning, you're starting from scratch, and
Yeah.
not just in terms of the culture that we're trying to establish with our team and the environment that we're trying to establish, but the basketball side of it, and also the relationship side, because
Yeah.
we're having to get to know completely new players. When you're talking about the new players, you're talking about the import players. So a huge challenge. And if somebody would have dropped me a little warning about that, that might have been helpful. But again, you can never foresee those types of things.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you mean. Every year, for those who don't know, in Alab, it's a different league. It's not the same as the PBA, where you get to keep the whole team throughout the entire, well, from year to year. So, like what Coach Jimmy said, almost every year we have to reset and recalibrate and really figure out who to get into our roster. Now we go into a pretty light-hearted question. This one's from Jet, who's listening to us on Facebook. Jet's
Hey,
asking,
Jed.
actually, he's
Yeah.
just asking, and we all know this, Coach Jimmy, you're probably the best dressed coach in the ABL by far.
Thanks, Coach.
You have to be the best
I, I,
best dressed coach.
I
So Jet's
appreciate that.
so Jet's asking, what is your fashion inspiration, Coach Jimmy? If you do have one.
No, you know what, Jed? I really don't have a fashion inspiration. Like for me, Coach, I just feel like, I don't play the game anymore, right? I've been
Yeah.
retired for 4 years. Um, but coaching in the ABL, and representing the country, and
Yeah.
representing, virtual playground, representing San Miguel, and ultimately the country. I want to make sure, as the coach, that I'm a representative, the right way, and
Yeah.
I feel like, part of honoring, the position of being a coach, that represents all that, is, you want to dress the part, and I do take pride in making sure that I'm sharp when I when I when I prepare for a game.
Yeah.
Just makes me feel good for sure. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's there's not really necessarily a fashion inspiration,
Yeah.
because you look at most coaches in the NBA, and everybody's probably in a shirt and tie and
Yeah.
jacket, but considering where we are and how hot it is, you have to kind of uh,
I know what you
alter
mean.
that alter that a bit. But yeah, I mean, I do take pride in representing our country, and the companies in the right way.
Yeah, it rubs off really. When I started in Alaba, I was surprised when you asked all of us to be in long sleeves and and slacks. I thought I was gonna go in and like in sweats and in a collared shirt at the most. But yeah, since in that day one in Mo, if you remember, we were all in our white
Yeah, I
shirts,
remember
and
that. Yep.
my wife told me that we all looked like groomsmen next to you, actually. Okay, thank you,
I
Jed, for
altered
that.
I altered the whole suit. That wasn't gonna work. It wasn't comfortable, and way too hot. Way too hot here. So I I,
Yeah.
I changed it up a bit.
Yeah, you're right. You always look good, coach. I gotta give you that. Um,
Thank you.
so another one is so again, from that transition, now that we know what you hope you knew going in, what is one thing that you want to tell athletes now who are making the transition into coaching? And most, if you look at the NBA, a lot of coaches, or even the PBA, a lot of the coaches in sports are ex-athletes, and we all know that there's a difference between playing the game and coaching the game. So, what's one piece of advice that you can give to athletes who are now making that transition into coaching, like recently retired or just decided, I'm done playing, I want to coach? What's one thing that you want to tell them?
Um, this will kind of be. I might cheat this question a little bit. It might be kind of a two answer to this
That's okay,
question.
coach.
I think one, for the athletes who are going to make the transition, there's more work to be done.
Hmm.
I've I've really taken pride in understanding that, I'm done playing the game, and now that I'm making this new transition, I have to learn what it takes to be a great coach. And 3 years in, I'm still learning, and taking advantage of times like these to listen to you know some great basketball minds to improve myself as a coach. But I do want to tell coach athletes that are making the transition to coaching, as a player, the fulfillment we have when it comes to competing, and the camaraderie that you have as a player with your teammates, those are memories that you hold on to forever.
Yeah.
And even for myself, looking back, I'll never forget all the championships that I was fortunate enough to win, and the relationships that I have even till now with those guys. But I think for athletes making the transition, when you do get into coaching, the fulfillment is different,
Mm.
but the feeling is the same, because now as a coach, there's no better fulfillment for myself than to see my players be successful.
Yeah.
When I think back, coach, when we won the championship our first season with Alab, to see all the guys in the locker room,
Yeah.
Robbie Sellis, Pomboy Raimundo, you know, Pau Havalona, Rico Meyerhoff, all these guys, celebrating, and just seeing how happy they were,
Yeah.
that fulfilled me. Like, man, I could do this forever, because you see how much work that they've put in, and to be able to reap all the rewards of the hard work that they put in, is a special feeling. And that's something that players making the transition to coaching should strive for, to see your athletes be successful, and hopefully they'll go on to have long careers in their respective sport.
Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah, and personally, I do want to thank you for that opportunity as well, because that was actually my. I think you know this. That was my first championship ever, and really that feeling in the locker room is different when you're looking at it from the perspective of a coach, and seeing all the players really celebrate and be jubilant, and seeing your family, and seeing
For sure.
the bosses, seeing you guys, seeing everybody who went through all those all the hard work that we did through those 7 months. It's really
Well, coach,
special and special.
it was awesome that and I'm thankful that you've been on board the last 3 years, because this is something that we talked about even when we trained
I know.
together my last season. And so just to kind of see it all come to fruition has been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Well, we're actually running out of time. We do have a few questions left.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
I'll answer them.
yeah. Well, this actually is just Alapag's the best point guard in Asia. So, yeah, I do agree. Uh, Thank you to everybody who's tuning in.
Yep.
Um, let's see who has questions. Well, while we're waiting for that, so Coach, well, like we said, GCQ is going to happen on Monday, but we don't know when sports will come back. If people want to follow you, if people want to listen to your stuff, or people want to view whatever you have in store, if you do have anything in store for your followers in the coming months or weeks, where can they
Yep.
follow you? And do you have any plans of? We see all of these camps, online camps, coming out these past few weeks. Are there any
Hmm.
plans of that, or if not, what are you planning to do moving forward?
Yeah, coach. Again, thank you to everybody who tuned in today. You know, I'm exploring the idea of doing something online. Um, so stay tuned for that. Over the next few weeks. Um, and yeah, I mean, everybody can follow. If they have any questions, they can feel free to message me on my Twitter or my Instagram. It's at jalapog3. Pretty easy. And they can also check out the YouTube channel. There's
Hello.
my son right there. They can also follow our YouTube channel that I'm doing with my wife and our kids. There's my daughter.
Hey, Kiana.
It's Alapag Family Fun, so they can tune into the stuff that, again, as parents, and going
Yeah,
through this going through this ECQ, GCQ, whatever it is.
yeah.
It forces you to be creative as a parent. So feel free to subscribe to that. But yeah, stay tuned. And again, for anyone who has questions, um, feel free to message me on social media, and I'll do my best to make sure that I get back to them.
Okay, before I let you go, Coach, this is kind of a
Yeah,
curveball. I'm
sure.
gonna start asking this question to all of my guests. Actually, uh,
Yep.
we all know you're a creature of habit. So, what is one habit that you have that you would say has helped you become the man that you are today? Like, for example, me, that habit, that habit is really exercise. But do you
Mhm.
have a specific habit that you have that has really helped you become the man that you are today?
A habit. Um, just in terms of
Or
my preparation, or just
yeah,
any
like
habit.
a routine that you do or something that you do on a daily basis that really uh that if you don't do it, it feels incomplete. Like the day feels
Uh,
incomplete.
I'll tell you this, Coach. And I don't think anybody really knows this, but this goes back to when I played, and this goes to now that I'm coaching. When I get on the bus,
Yeah.
for a game, from when I played to now, especially now that I have my kids, um, when we get on the bus, the first thing I do before the bus takes off, I call my wife and my kids.
Mm,
Um, because for me, being in sports, whether as a player, as a coach, things can get so stressful,
yeah.
and you could literally just kind of, you know, kill yourself almost, when it comes to the stress, because you have so many things on your mind. And I just feel like talking to them, when I get on the bus on the way to the game, it just kind of gives me that balance of normalcy, and you know makes me think about them, so that just for that brief moment, letting them know that I'm on my way to the game, got to go take care of business. It gives me that sense of, okay, I'm good, and
Yeah.
and and, and I can, knowing that they're good and I'm going to see them at the game. That minute, 2 minute conversation, I can now shift my focus to getting ready for the game, and going through my whole thought process
Yeah.
at that point.
Actually, that tied in because, well, my wife between. She just asked me,
Yeah,
what's your pre and post game rituals? So I guess that's one of the rituals that you have, uh,
yeah,
calling
and
your family.
there's that before the game, and one of my long time pre-game routines, and my wife still makes fun of me when because I do it now as a coach. The night before a game, I get my stuff ready. So
Really?
so I have all my notes prepared already. I have my outfit, my tie, my collared shirt, my pants all ready, so that when it's game day, I can relax, hang out with the family, and then go through that same preparation I had when I was playing. But I'm substituting the game shoes for dress shoes now. So again, coach, I'm a creature of habit. So
Yeah, yeah.
some things don't change.
I know. Sorry, but last question. Somebody also typed it in just now. Do you have
Yep.
any books? Do you have any? I know you read. So, do you have
Yep.
any books that you want to recommend for people or for aspiring coaches? Do you have any books that
Yeah.
you want to recommend for aspiring coaches?
Um, for aspiring coaches, one book that I would recommend would be the Champion's Mind.
Yeah,
Um, it's just a great book. It allows you just to really see, what goes to the mind of people who've had success in their respective sport.
yeah,
Um, that I mean, I found really really interesting. Because again, as a coach, developing relationships with your players has become such an important component nowadays. I feel like that dynamic is just as important as the X's and O's, in terms
mm,
of building the relationship, and just kind of getting to know them.
yeah.
Excuse me. And then another book that I just finished reading is uh, about the story of Cleveland coming back from the 3-1
Oh
deficit
yeah.
against Golden State. So apologies to all the Golden State fans, but the book's called Return of the King, and it
Yeah,
kind
I've
of
seen that.
documents what happened during that season, and what the team went through. And again, it's this time at home has given me more time to read more than I have probably in the last few years.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
that's it.
So yeah, those
Uh,
two books.
yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Aaron and Aaron, Joshua, Sumikon. You've answered this. Do you carry the same pre-game routines as a player to being a coach? And I think you've
Yep.
answered that already. Yeah.
Yep. I do. I do. Creature of habit.
Yes. Yes. Well, I believe that we are, as an organization in Alab, successful because of that. And you know how we travel all the time, and that presents a lot of, I guess, curveballs that might happen when we travel, and having
Oh
that
yeah.
normal, having that sense of normalcy, and having that sense of, you know being grounded really helps in keeping an organization on track. It's We all know it's
For
really a
sure.
shame. It's really a shame that it had to end a little earlier this year, and we're hoping that
Yeah.
we can.
But it's something that almost every team in the world went through, right? No,
Yes, exactly.
no March Madness. No. I mean, everyone has been affected. So it's
Yeah,
it's it's tough, but hopefully we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
yeah. We'll just have to adapt, right? All right, coach.
Absolutely.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Inside the Dugout. Thank you very much, Coach Jimmy, for all of the valuable insights that you gave us and our listeners this afternoon. Thank you very much,
Anytime,
Coach.
anytime, Coach. Thank you for having me.
I'll see you soon, okay?
Yep. I'll talk to you soon, Coach.
All right, Coach. I'll see you.
All right. All right. Bye. Say bye. Say bye.
Bye.
All right, Coach. See
All
ya.
right, Coach. See ya. There it is. First episode of Inside the Dugout done. Thank you very much, Coach Jimmy Alapag, for gracing us with your presence. If you missed the telecast, it's going to be live on my page, Coach Chappy Callanta, over on Facebook. And again, we are going to do our best to grab the audio from this, and you can listen to it over on Spotify and Apple Music. Thank you very much to the Tripod Network, who will be hosting this for Spotify and Apple Music, and to my wife and my family, who are, of course, always very, very supportive of my endeavors. Again, this was Inside the Dugout. Next week, we're going to have a new personality for you guys. We are going to try and get maybe a player this time. We're going to try and get a player for next week's show. And stay tuned for more announcements on when that'll be. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.